is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. You know, I was really happy when I saw this gentleman on our schedule because we haven't had anyone from Delphix here on Techstrong TV in a while. And, you know, 8 years of doing DevOps, Delphix has been a company that I think we've covered from day one. And it's good to have someone from Delphix back. I want to introduce you to Steven Chung of Delphix. Steven, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for having me this morning.
It's a pleasure. So, Steven, I didn't say your title. I was going to kind of leave it to you. Why don't we start off with this? Why don't you give people a little background on who Steven Chung is? And then, if you don't mind, let's talk about, just level set on who Delphix is, what you guys do. I know over the years, right, the mission has continued to grow. But, it'd be good to bring the audience up to date.
Great, yes. Yeah, Steven Chung, I'm the president at Delphix. I run our go-to-market operations, been with the company for 3 years. And prior to Delphix, I was chief revenue officer at a startup called PagerDuty. So I know there's some people in the development community. So I came from the DevOps toolchain space, helped take that company from Series B through our IPO at the New York Stock Exchange in April 2019. And prior to that, had done stints at companies like Salesforce and Symantec and other infrastructure and application software companies. So been in the enterprise B2B software world for 25 years. So, why Delphix? And then I'll kind of get on to who Delphix is for those who may not be familiar. But Delphix was fascinating to me because this was a late stage startup that really belongs in the DevOps toolchain space that no one's ever heard of before. And so if you're a developer or you come from sort of that technical background of building applications, you think about all the innovation that's been invested in helping to automate application software development. So you have tools like Splunk, you have tools like PagerDuty, you have an entire DevOps tool chain out there to help developers be more productive and build sort of this self-service model that the Amazons of the world have been developing over the last 10 years. However, the long pole on the tent that we often see is data, right? So while we've automated a lot of this other stuff, monitoring, productivity, GitHub, GitLab, do all the stuff on the application software development, you're still stuck queued by data, right? Data sitting in silos, and you have to create a ticket, ask your DBAs to give you data to test to complete your job. And so even though so much of the application development lifecycle is moving really quickly, you're kind of constrained by data. So data is like, if you're running a bakery, the analogy I would use is data is kind of like the oven. You can keep putting more chefs in the kitchen, but if you only have one oven, everybody's waiting for that one oven. So what we're saying is, instead of one oven, what if you could have unlimited number of ovens? We can virtualize all the databases within the enterprise, no matter what they are, modern, old, in between, and be able to serve that up and automate the flow of that data to developers so that they have it on demand. So instead of writing a ticket and having to ask for data that will be there 3 weeks later to be able to complete your job, test it, put it into production, why don't we give it to you on demand so you can go do it whenever you're ready? That's one. The other method would be, how do I fully automate it into a CI/CD pipeline flow where nobody has to do anything? It just goes into production. So if we think about, an enterprise, it's not unnatural for a large enterprise with a mission critical application to only do like one major release per year because they're so scared of all the dependencies that go to it. Or if you're, doing it maybe a couple times a year, that's all they have time for, given all of the compliance and all the processes that are around that. But what if we could just give it to you on a daily basis or automate it where you can do multiple releases per day? So what we see is the most innovative enterprises have fully automated their DevOps processes by unlocking what I would call the last mile of the DevOps toolchain, which is data, and automating that final piece of it to the extent that they're doing several releases per day. Or in the case of a Fortune 50 tech company, they're doing, dozens of releases per day, right? So this gives one an advantage in going to market with new applications, new offerings in this digital economy that you could be a traditional business, a traditional enterprise, and be as agile as the Amazons and the Airbnbs of the world. And that's what we want to get to. So that's Delphix. And I think the other reason why we've had such great growth is besides the automation from a DevOps toolchain perspective and accelerating the application data lifecycle, we also have a masking product that helps with data compliance. So that's the other piece. So it's one thing to be able to give people data. The other issue is, well, that data has to be masked and it has to be compliant, because I can't just give you Alan's data, production data to a developer where he or she can see it. So we have a product that we call continuous compliance. And what it does is that it masks data with referential integrity such that you have a single source of truth. So Alan in Oracle is Alan in DB2 is Alan in SQL Server, all the different products where there's a single source of truth that we can mask with referential integrity and be able to check the big compliance box. So that does not slow down the application development process. So the net of it is, we can get you from doing one release a year on your e-commerce application, your B2C mobile application, instead of once a year. How about once a month? How about once a week? How about every single day? So when the business comes to you and says, Alan, I got a great new savings account product that I want to go launch, and I need it like yesterday. And you're like, well, you have to wait till next year, or give me 6 months versus, okay, customer, how about I get that to you next week? Or you're a retail company and you want to launch a flash sale on a brand new product that's super exciting. And, you don't have to plan it 6 months in advance. You're like, I got a great innovation. I need to get this out to market next week, tomorrow. Giving companies that level of agility drives revenue, and revenue growth while still being compliant in this world that we're in is very exciting to CXOs, because they're kind of stuck between the rock and a hard places. If you're a CTO or a CIO, it's like the business wants to move fast, but also the business has said, the CFO has said, well, we have to do this safely. We have to make sure that our data is compliant with GDPR and CCPA and HIPAA and all this other stuff. That is sacrosanct. So security and compliance are table stakes. That has to happen before anything else happens, right? Well, the issue is then the business, the people in marketing and sales and product are like, well, we want to get to our customers. And so what's really exciting is Delphix's mission is we want our customers to have their cake and eat it too. We want them to be able to have that agility and that speed while at the same time doing it safely and in a way that's compliant with all of these myriad of regulations that exist. So I'll pause right there, Alan. That was quite.
No, I think I did well.
It's a good place to pause. I think you did a great job at setting the table on that. Stephen, one of the lessons I've learned is, first of all, data is sacrosanct, right? It's all about the data, stupid, right? Sometimes we lose sight of that. But not all data is equal. When we talk about getting the data to developers, what kind of data are we talking about there, Stephen? Is it results of tests or feedback loops, from deployed apps or something else? But, because there's data and then there's data.
Yeah.
Well,
what
are we talking?
Well, I'm talking about all types of relational data, but I'll tell you the ones that matter the most, to your point, is sensitive data. So let's talk about sensitive data. So let's talk about some of the industry verticals that we serve. So think about health insurance, where you have HIPAA records, you have patient data, super sensitive stuff, very large amounts of it. So we have large health insurance companies, healthcare is a huge vertical for us, and that is very sensitive data. So if you want to test something like a claims processing application, so I'm coming up with the latest and greatest claims processing application so that if I want to file my Medicare claims with an app with, insurance company X, that I can do so in a modern way, right? I don't have to call somebody. I can download an app and I can feel safe that if I wanted to go check on the status of my claim or whatever, I can go do this in a modern way. Well, in order to build that, you have to make sure that you have access as a developer to production quality data that is still obfuscated, that is still masked, that still gives you the quality of the testing that one needs, but still is safe. And so that's an example of that sensitive data that can be a very large data set, right? And it's a regulated industry. The other would be clearly like banking. We have a lot of financial services companies. We have large banks that are customers. And so think of the millions or tens of millions of banking customers. So similar thing. I'm so-and-so bank and I want to upgrade and build a new B2C mobile application because, it's time we do that. Well, to test that, we have, again, personal information that has to be protected. And if you think of it in the context of not just because it's good business to protect personal information, the government requires it and will levy hefty fines if you're not in compliance. And so there's these horror stories, and I'll protect the names of these companies where a large digital brand has been fined for over $1 billion in the European Union for several infractions of the GDPR rule. And that's just not something you want on your brand. There's financial liability, but there's also, kind of brand damage where I don't want to do business with a customer that doesn't protect my information. And telecommunications is the other one, right? Where there's been notable breaches. This is all public information, by the way, the whole T-Mobile breach that happened and the class action lawsuits. And so we have a customer in Europe that has hired Delphix and is deploying our technology to protect a petabyte of data that has all of their customer records in it. And it's kind of shocking to think that they would spend that kind of money in this kind of economy that is challenging. But the boards are saying, this is table stakes. This is sacrosanct. You got to have it. But the beauty is we'll say, well, we'll make you compliant, but you don't have to give up your agility for that compliance. So compliance is usually viewed as like an anchor. Data by itself is an anchor, it's slow. But then when you add layers of security and compliance protocols, then it makes it even slower. What we're saying is, well, what if we could just give you that agility? Because we'll be able to provide all these virtual copies of your database to the extent that, you don't have to go slow. You can actually go faster and be in compliance. And that is an unbelievable value prop. And clearly, when you can do something faster like that, and with greater efficiency, that it also drives a hard cost saving. So even in this difficult economy, then you give them like a three-pronged value prop. We'll make sure that we tick the compliance box so you're safe. Secondly, we'll make your developers happy. We'll give you agility and we'll increase the throughput of your software development so they're happy. And then finally, because of this agility and efficiency, you're actually going to save money. We can drive hard cost savings on your infrastructure because you need less resources to go do all of this work. And by reducing your hardware and infrastructure costs, you're also mitigating your carbon footprint. So it goes back to sustainability. Well, if you think of like, virtual machines, right? As a way to drive efficiency. So think about virtual data, right? So if you can take, a petabyte of data and shrink it to, 10% or 5% of the size, in running your business, then you can dramatically reduce your costs as well as your impact of electrical consumption, which then reduces your CO2 carbon footprint, which again, it's just another box that, and I won't say that we sought at the early stages of Delphix to say we're going to build a sustainable software company. It was just a consequence of being more efficient in data centers to say we've reduced the cost of operations, we've reduced the amount of electricity and resources we have to consume. So therefore, there's even a fourth value prop around sustainability that we're also able to benefit our customers with.
I want to come back to the sustainable and sustainableIT.org in a moment. But I want to go back to something else you said earlier. And that is, look, in these choppy economic times, and quite frankly, as you and I sit here today, Steven, who the heck knows what 2023, I mean, there's good, there's bad, there's a lot of uncertainty. Let's say that. But one of the things I read is a new requirement coming down the pike this year. I forgot if it was the NIST framework or something else, where the boards of these large companies, public, private, have to sign off on the cybersecurity and compliance. processes and policies that are being implemented. And this is truly, I don't want to be one of these guys selling FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But this is truly going to bring responsibility for doing, for taking reasonable actions on your cyber and compliance right up to the board level, right? Almost bypassing even the C level, going right to the board level. And that is going to be a reason why they're going to want to make sure that they're doing things like what Delphix is talking about, because, no one wants that headache, right? And it's in the news every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, and there are macro reasons why boards are driving even like security. Cybersecurity has been an issue ever since the rise of the internet, right? So we've always had that, but it's intensified recently. And what I can share with you is I travel around the world. I talk to CIOs and CTOs and CISOs. They're like, hey, Steven, if you haven't noticed these days, there's a huge all-out war in Eastern Europe. And, the protagonists against the West are actively waging cyber warfare against the West, against the European Union, against the US. And then you have these hostile nation states, and we know who they are. I'll protect the names of you can sort of guess, but
we don't have to. Yeah, you don't know.
We know exactly what's going on. And so this isn't some, very smart geek that's randomly somewhere just trying to go hack into the NSA's network. These are hostile nation states with trained engineers who are trying to take down and slow down the West in any way, shape, or form as part of that process. So we have hostile nation states. We still have cyber criminals that are out there making money off of it. So we just live in this world where cybersecurity is a huge issue. And then the second piece is that the data privacy regulations. And so as these economies are evolving, the citizens demand that their privacy be protected. And so they're coming down hard on companies to button that stuff up. And so again, it creates that quandary for the CIOs, the CTOs of the world is I have to be compliant, but I also have to run a business and be agile and to stay in business. There's no other choice.
And it's getting more.
Yeah. Steven, we're over time, but quickly, give us a quick, I got maybe 30 seconds to a minute, sustainablet.org. I know it's a mission. It was started by Delphix co-founder, CEO, Jed. But if you wouldn't mind, give us a quick highlight.
Yeah, sustainablet.org is a nonprofit started by Delphix to solicit technology leadership, CIOs, CTOs around the world, many of whom are our customers, to collaborate with and share best practices on how to run more sustainable IT operations. And so if you think about, look, I got all these data centers, they're very resource intensive, they have a huge carbon footprint. How can we leverage, the cloud, public cloud, for example, to promote greater sustainability? What can we do within our own IT practices to promote greater sustainability? And so we really think in the context of how do we make our own enterprises more sustainable, but also how do we drive our products and services for the external world to be more sustainable? And the idea would be that this nonprofit would share content, best practices, and knowledge so that we can basically promote this on a global scale. And I'll give you a simple example of this. Is just there's some vendors that have been used for e-waste. So think of all the IT departments that have old computers or phones, and they just sit somewhere in a warehouse. What do you do with them? You could dispose of them. You could throw them into a garbage dump. What a waste with all that. And then there's companies that will actually take that equipment, many of which is perfectly good equipment, and help donate that to schools that might be underprivileged schools, for example. So figure out a way to dispose of electronic waste. And that seems like such a simple concept, but if you think about all of the corporations around the world and how many devices that they have, and we don't even think twice about this. Is like, and so now like these CIOs, like, hey, I use a vendor here, I use a vendor there, and here's a great way to dispose of your e-waste, and who knows, maybe even make some money off of that, right, by disposing of it, but in the very least, do some good with it. But then there's more advanced techniques of like, well, where do you buy your electricity from, right? If you're a data center, could you buy it from a place that has sustainable electrical sources like hydroelectricity or nuclear that is zero emission versus buying your electricity from a coal-fired plant. So there's all sorts of specific actionable ideas and methods that are being shared through this organization with the mission of spreading that knowledge across all of the IT industry, as well as within companies and governments around the world, so that people can continue to evolve their best practices around sustainable IT.
I love it. Stephen, unfortunately, I got to cut it here. We got people in the waiting room for our next interview. But hey, man, pleasure having you on here. Don't be a stranger, right? Come on, we can continue this discussion. Come back real soon. In the meantime, best of luck with Delphix, and you guys keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thanks for having us today.
Pleasure. Steven Chung, president of Delphix, here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.